Classical conditioning is a type of unconscious or automatic learning in which you learn through associating two stimuli with each other. Neutral stimulus is a stimulus that produces no effect until paired with an unconditioned stimulus. An unconditioned stimulus is a stimulus that naturally triggers a response, and that response is called an unconditioned response. When a neutral stimulus is paired with an unconditioned stimulus, that stimulus becomes the conditioned stimulus that triggers the response called the conditioned response. In most cases, the unconditioned response and the conditioned response are the same. We use classical conditioning in our everyday lives without even realizing it. Like whenever you hear a similar notification tone as yours, you're most likely to check your phone for notifications. That's because of classical conditioning. We can associate thinking positive with the work you do in school to do better in that. Let's say you usually have anxiety before a test, and because of that anxiety, you don't do well in it. Maybe there's a song that you really like and that lowers your anxiety. You would want to listen to that song right before the test so it lowers your anxiety and you will do well in the test. In this case, the unconditioned stimulus will be lowering your anxiety level. The unconditioned response and the conditioned response would be doing well in the test. And the neutral stimulus, which would turn into conditioned stimulus, would be the song. Also remember that you should often pair conditioned stimulus with the unconditioned stimulus because classical conditioning can fade out over time if you stop pairing them. This is called extinction. You could also do something similar to improve your grades or to improve your behavior, like getting up early in the morning so that you don't miss school.
Operant conditioning is a method of learning that occurs through rewards and punishments for behaviors. It's important that when entering high school, you understand the concept of operant conditioning, as it can help motivate you and be a great tool for success. Through taking advantage of rewards in high school and avoiding punishments, you will be able to get ahead right off the bat. Reinforcement is any event that strengthens or increases the behavior that it follows. Reinforcement has two categories: positive reinforcement, which is praise or direct reward, and negative reinforcement, which is the removal of an undesired event. To take advantage of these rewards, which can include negative reinforcements like homework exemption, final exemption, and positive reinforcements like gifts from administrators, trips, and other opportunities, it's important to make it a habit to do the encouraged behaviors like keep up good grades, have good attendance, take challenging classes, be engaged during class, and participate in school events. Punishment is the presentation of an adverse event or outcome that causes a decrease in the behavior it follows. Punishment also includes two categories: positive punishment, which presents an unfavorable event or outcome to weaken the behavior it follows, and negative punishment, which removes a reward to weaken the behavior it follows. Punishments in high school can include positive punishments like detention and failing grades, and negative punishments like expulsion, phone taking, suspension, revoking on trip privileges, and school suspension, etc. To avoid these, you must avoid behaviors such as being late to class, skipping class, disrespecting administrators, not paying attention in class, cheating on tests, homework, classwork, leaving school without permission, and not doing work in class. You could also use this concept to help motivate yourself on your own using a primary reinforcer, which are naturally occurring reinforcers like food, sleep, etc., to help you finish your work and quickly go to bed, or a secondary reinforcer, which are rewarding stimuli that are paired with other reinforcing stimuli to help you finish that writing entry for that school contest with a large cash prize. However, you should be careful, because some suffer from the over-justification effect, a phenomenon in which being rewarded for doing something actually diminishes intrinsic motivation. People tend to rely too much on certain benefits like good grades in the gradebook, but when it comes to ungraded assignments, they have no motivation to do so. So be mindful of falling victim to this effect, as it can have a serious impact on your motivations and behaviors. Make sure you're completing work and doing what you're supposed to, even without reward, to keep your intrinsic motivation.
How do humans think? Aside from the biological and chemical components, what processes commonly take place in our minds in order for us to have thoughts and solve problems? Cognitive psychology is the study of internal mental processes, all of the things that go on inside your brain. Perception, thinking, memory, attention, language, problem solving, and learning are all part of cognitive psychology. We make sense of our environment and experiences by forming concepts, mental groupings of similar objects, events, ideas, or people. We use these categories to quickly recognize patterns. Similar to concept organization is a prototype. The prototype is the first image that pops into your head when I say a word. For example, dog. You might think of a golden retriever puppy or a fluffy white shih tzu. These are your prototypes. The more closely something matches our prototype of a concept, the more readily we recognize it as an example of the concept. Matching new items to prototypes provide a quick and easy method for sorting items into categories. So, those are some ways to recognize information, but what about the beliefs and thoughts that we have after taking in our environment and experiences? That is critical thinking. When thinking critically, we can use convergent or divergent thinking. Convergent thinking is the type of thinking that focuses on coming up with the finite and logical answer. Divergent thinking is when we generate creative ideas by exploring many possible solutions. Both of these types of thinking are used in problem solving, the mental process that people go through to discover, analyze, and solve problems. There are several methods of problem solving, all of which are equally useful for different solutions. Trial and error method works by trying a number of different solutions and ruling out those that do not work. This method would be helpful in some instances, like figuring out which of your shirts matches the pants you choose. However, it would be much more difficult if the number of solutions were much larger, like trying on every shirt in the mall to find one that matches. That would take way too long. In instances such as the mall scenario, heuristics would be a more logical approach. Heuristics is the rule of thumb, an educated guess based on prior experiences that helps narrow down the possible solutions for a problem. These mental shortcuts reduce effort in problem solving. But if accuracy is important and you can't just rely on an educated guess, then algorithms are the way to go. These are procedures that consistently provide the correct answer. The downside to algorithms is that they take a long time to make, since they're so accurate. Lastly, there's insights. This is the aha moment, a sudden and often new realization of the solution of a problem, such as suddenly seeing a cause and effect relationship. Insights can sometimes occur long after you're first exposed to a problem, even years later. Processes that lead to insight happen outside of awareness. There are all of these different ways to solve problems, but of course there are also obstacles to problem solving. For example, mental set. The tendency people have to only use solutions that have worked in the past rather than looking for alternative ideas. This leads to rigid thinking and inflexibility and is often supported by convergent thinking for the finite and logical answer. If there's only one answer, there's only one way to solve a problem, but often that is not true. Another obstacle is functional fixedness. The tendency to view problems only in their customary manner. This is similar to mental set. It prevents people from fully seeing all the different options that might be available to find a solution. When dealing with functional fixedness, you should try divergent thinking to solve a problem more creatively. Now the last chunk of obstacles. Confirmation bias, which is a tendency to search for information that supports our preconceptions and ignore or distort contradictory evidence. This is similar to belief perseverance, which is straight-up denial, the tendency to hold on to beliefs even when evidence proves those beliefs to be wrong. If you want to get rid of belief perseverance or confirmation bias, a simple remedy exists. Consider the opposite. Then there's overconfidence, which is the tendency to overestimate our own knowledge, skill, or judgment. People may not realize how uninformed they are about a particular subject. We don't know what we don't know. And then there's hindsight bias, which is the I knew it all along phenomenon. The tendency people have to view events as more predictable than they really are. Like people who swear they knew how the movie was going to end before it actually ended, when in reality we know that they did not.
Remember this phrase, apples eating lunch. Memory. Memory is probably one of the most important parts of our life. Without it, you wouldn't remember what I just said. The definition of memory is the faculty by which the mind stores and remembers information. Using memory when studying can utilize your short and long-term processes, depending on how and how long you study. Short-term memory is the concept involving the extremely limited number of items that humans are capable of keeping in mind at one time. Where you parked your car, what you eat for lunch, or forgetting the small details of what you read about the other day are all examples of short-term memory. While this form of memory may work when cramming last minute for a test or a quiz, all of the things you learned about will be forgotten in a matter of days. That's why long-term memory is the best way to learn, really, really remember what you're learning. There are two types of long-term memory, explicit and implicit. Explicit memory means recalling items on a to-do list or the birthdays of your best friends. Meanwhile, implicit memories are things like remembering how to ride a bike or humming a familiar song. Both of these work together to help you remember things for a long time, which is super helpful when getting ready for final exams or a test. Having background knowledge makes remembering things a lot easier as well. So concept mapping and word webs help awaken your previous knowledge and enhance your memory. Using flashcards and summarizing are examples of retrieval practice strategies to recall information you've learned but stored. Doing fun, interactive games to learn and study will be more memorable and will stick with you as opposed to a lecture. So, use your memory to help you when you're studying. Now, what phrase did I say to remember at the beginning?